So what if I told you that most of what you do every single day is basically a waste of your time? It sounds harsh, I know, but it's the core idea behind the 80-20 rule. And honestly, it's a principle that can totally change how you look at your work, your life, even your own happiness. So let's dive in and break it down.
You know that feeling, right? Your to-do list is just endless. You're bouncing from email to meeting to task. You're always doing something. But then, at the end of the day, you kind of collapse on the couch and think, what did I actually get done today that mattered? It's super frustrating, and it turns out there's a really powerful reason this happens to all of us.
And that reason is called the Pareto Principle, but pretty much everyone knows it as the 80-20 rule. The whole idea is simple, but it is seriously profound. A small chunk of your efforts, like 20%, is responsible for the vast majority, like 80% of your actual results.
Look, we're all kind of wired to think that if we put in 50% of our effort, we should get 50% of the results back. It seems fair, right? But the world just doesn't work that way. It's predictably unbalanced. Now, the 80-20 rule isn't some rigid law of physics, but it's an incredible observation that a vital few things in our lives matter way, way more than the trivial many.
So where on earth did this crazy idea come from? Well, the story starts in a pretty unexpected place. A garden full of pea pods.
Yeah, you heard that right. It all starts with an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto. He was just hanging out in his garden when he noticed something weird. A small number of his pea pods were producing most of the peas. That little observation sparked his curiosity, and he started looking for that pattern elsewhere. And boom, he found it. He discovered that about 20% of the people in Italy owned 80% of the land. But it wasn't until decades later that a quality control expert, Dr. Joseph Jurin, really blew it up. He applied it to manufacturing and gave it that brilliant name, a focus on the vital few and the trivial many.
Now, whenever an idea gets this powerful and this famous, a bunch of myths are going to pop up around it. So let's take a second to bust a few of the biggest misconceptions about what this rule isn't.
First things first, the 80-20 rule is absolutely not an excuse to be lazy. Not at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about being incredibly effective. It's a way to be strategic and pour your limited energy into the few things that will give you the biggest bang for your buck, instead of just spreading yourself thin.
And please don't get hung up on the numbers being exactly 80 and 20. They almost never are. Sometimes it's more like 90-10. Other times it might be closer to 70-30. The number doesn't matter. What matters is the principle of imbalance, that a small input creates a huge output. 80-20 is just a catchy, memorable name for it.
Okay, this one's a biggie. The idea is not to just look at your to-do list and slash 80% of it. I mean, some of those low-impact things like paying your rent or doing the dishes still have to get done, right? The real goal is to identify that super important 20%, give that your best energy and focus, and then figure out how to handle the rest more smartly. Can you automate it, delegate it, or just batch it all together?
All right, so the theory is cool, but how do we actually use this thing in our real lives? Let's get practical and talk about a simple toolkit for putting the 80-20 rule to work.
Here's a super simple 4-step way to do it. First, you've just got to get everything out of your head and onto a list. See what you're actually dealing with. Second, and this is the magic step, you got to analyze that list and figure out what are the vital few things here that will actually move the needle. Third, you have to protect your best energy. Schedule those big impact tasks for when you're at your sharpest. And finally, you find a smarter way to handle everything else.
In the business world, they actually have a specific tool for this called a Pareto chart. It's a brilliant way to see the principle in action. You just line up all the causes of a problem from the biggest to the smallest, and right away you can see the vital few. In this example, cause A is causing a whopping 75% of the issues. So where do you focus your energy first? Right there. That's how you get the biggest impact.
And I promise you, once you start looking for this pattern, you are going to see it absolutely everywhere. In business, a few key clients bring in most of the money. For coders, a handful of bugs cause most of the crashes. But here's where it gets really powerful. When you turn that lens on yourself. Think about it. A few of your habits probably account for most of your health and happiness. And a few key relationships in your life probably provide almost all of your fulfillment and joy.
But hang on a second. Is the 80-20 rule always true? Especially now in our crazy digital world? Well, let's talk about a fascinating counter-argument that's popped up thanks to the internet.
This is called the long tail theory. The idea is that with basically infinite digital shelf space, like on Amazon or Netflix, companies can actually make a ton of money from the trivial many.
The tiny sales from a massive number of weird, niche products can, when added all together, actually be bigger than the sales from just a few big bestsellers.
So it really all comes down to context. The 80-20 rule, the Pareto Principle, is king in a world with physical limits. A movie theater only has so many screens, so of course they're going to show the blockbusters. But online, the long tail takes over. Netflix doesn't just make money from the latest hit show. A huge part of its value is having that one obscure documentary that you can't find anywhere else.
Okay, so after all of that, what's the big takeaway? What's the one thing you should really walk away with today?
If you remember one thing, make it this. The 80-20 rule is not a license to just stop doing things. It is a powerful lens for strategic focus. It's about consciously and deliberately choosing where you invest your most valuable resources, your time and your energy, to get the absolute best results you can.
I really love this quote from Brian Tracy because it just nails the mental shift you have to make. Our brains crave that little dopamine hit we get from checking off a small, easy task. It feels good. But real, meaningful progress, the stuff that actually changes your life, that comes from tackling the big, high-impact stuff first, even when it's harder.
And so I'll leave you with one final question to really think about. In your career, in your health, in your relationships, in your happiness, what is your 20%? Because just figuring that out, well, that's the first and most important step to getting so much more out of your life with so much less effort.